Some time ago, we talked about the launch of Miliastra Wonderland in Genshin Impact and the less than stellar reception it received. Judging by the response to that video, it seems a lot of you shared those frustrations. The confusing monetization, the hostile free-to-play systems, the feeling that something just wasn't right. Well, it's been around a week since the launch, and the situation hasn't exactly improved. In fact, it has taken a couple of rather dramatic turns, fueled primarily by one thing: silence. Complete deafening silence from HoYoverse regarding the massive backlash. Today, we are going to look at the fallouts from that silence, how it seems to have escalated player frustration, led to some unconventional actions, and what it might mean for the future for this mode and player trust. If you appreciate these kinds of breakdowns and want to stay updated, consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. It really does help. So, Miliastra Wonderland launched around a week ago, on the 22nd, and the reaction, well, as we discussed in the last video, and judging by how many of you watched and agreed, the negative sentiment isn't just a loud minority, it is widespread, and it hasn't gone away. If anything, the initial shock seems to have settled into a kind of solid frustration. The core complaints remain the same: the aggressive monetization, the confusing currencies, the insulting free-to-play system, the bugs, the feeling that it is just unfinished. But what is perhaps more significant now is the response from HoYoverse, or rather, the lack of one. Despite this massive, near-universal outcry across pretty much every platform, Twitter, Reddit, even their own website HoYoLab, you name it, HoYoverse has remained completely silent. Nothing. No official statements acknowledging the feedback, no developer letters explaining their reasoning, not even a vague promise to look into it, just, silence. And this silence, it is noteworthy. It stands out. Think about how much hype they put into this mode before launch, am I right? The long segments in the live streams, the dedicated trailers, the web events. They really tried pushing Miliastra Wonderland to go from that level of marketing to complete radio silence. When the launch is clearly facing major issues, it feels jarring, don't you think? And more than that, it leaves players feeling ignored. It reinforces that cynical feeling many already have. The comments like, "I'm going to have so much fun complaining on the surveys," followed immediately by the thought, as if they listened to previous surveys. When the feedback is this loud and this negative, and the response is just silence, it doesn't exactly build confidence that feedback matters. In the face of such clear, widespread problems, this kind of silence can easily be interpreted as, well, indifference, or maybe just arrogance, like they just don't think the complaints are valid. Or perhaps, like usual, they just hope it'll all blow over if they ignore it long enough. And this silence, this feeling of being ignored, that seems to have led to the next rather dramatic turn in this whole situation, which is that the official Miliastra Wonderland account on Twitter was suspended. Just gone. I mean, at least for a while. And now we don't have an official statement from HoYoverse explaining exactly why, but the widely accepted theory, the one everyone is talking about, is that it was due to mass reporting. That is, enough dissatisfied players reported the account that it triggered an automatic suspension. And the community reaction to that theory wasn't exactly subtle. People were saying things like, "Ain't no way, this is the funniest thing I've seen all week. The update was so bad that the account for Miliastra Wonderland got mass reported." And now, regardless of whether you agree with the mass reporting as a tactic, you have to see this as an escalation. It suggests players felt that the normal feedback channels, survey, comments, maybe even customer supports, weren't working, that their grievances weren't being heard. So it seems they took a lot more direct and certainly more disruptive action against an official communication channel. It is a pretty clear signal of extreme dissatisfaction, tied directly back to the core problems. As that same comment highlighted, like, no one wants this update. No one is going to pay over $100 for a skin for a random character. An official account apparently brought down by player action. You would expect the rest of the community to be, maybe concerned, maybe discuss platform rules. Well, the actual reaction was something else entirely. Instead of concern, the overwhelming response was just amusement, jokes, memes. Specifically, people started flooding comment sections under posts reporting the suspension with variations of the "if you laugh" meme, implying that finding this situation funny sends you straight to hell, but laughing anyway. And the amusement wasn't attached. There was a strong undercurrent of people explicitly saying the suspension was deserved, that the account representing this mode earned this outcome because of how bad the mode itself is, because of the predatory monetization, because of the HoYoverse's silence, because of a lot of things. And that reaction, the laughter, the memes, right? The feeling that it was deserved is perhaps even more telling than the suspension itself. It shows that the player sentiment, at least regarding Miliastra Wonderland, has moved beyond simple disappointment. It has shifted into outright mockery, rejection. There doesn't seem to be any sympathy left for this particular venture. The goodwill, if there ever was much to begin with after launch, appears to be completely gone. When players are laughing at the downfall of an official communication channel for a new feature, it signals a profound disconnect, a complete breakdown of any positive feeling towards it. And in the face of this level of community rejection, HoYoverse's continued silence becomes, well, even more conspicuous. It is really obvious and it just stands out. Because now, the silence isn't just in response to angry comments, it follows a dramatic, visible event, like their official Twitter account getting suspended, presumably due to that anger. And that ongoing silence, it just amplifies everything. It makes the situation look worse. It can easily come across as tone deaf, like they either don't know what's happening or they do know, and they just don't care. The feeling gets reinforced that they are deliberately ignoring how severe the backlash actually is. And this kind of inaction, it has consequences. It damages the relationship between the players and the developer. Trust erodes. It wears away, slowly getting destroyed. I mean, think about it. If you have a legitimate widespread concerns about monetization, about bugs, about feeling misled, and the company you're giving your time and maybe even your money to responds with nothing, absolute silence. I mean, why would you trust them next time? Why would you bother giving constructive feedback in the future if you feel like it just goes into a void? This dynamic makes players less likely to engage properly and maybe more likely to resort to things like, well, mass reporting. It is a missed opportunity, really. Even a simple acknowledgement would have been something, right? A quick post saying, "We hear your feedback about Miliastra Wonderland and we are looking into the issues," or "We understand the concerns regarding monetization and are discussing it internally." Anything would have been better than just this silence. But instead, we got this void, and that silence is allowing the frustration and the mockery to fester, making it harder to see how they can possibly turn the situation around for Miliastra Wonderland. Which leads to the next question players are starting to ask. Does this mode even belong in Genshin Impact at all? Because the pushback now extends beyond the gacha or the bugs, or maybe even the account suspension. It is starting to become about the mode's very existence inside the main Genshin client. We are seeing sentiment pop up, even suggestions for petitions asking HoYoverse to make Miliastra Wonderland and even the TCG separate applications, separate downloads. Why? Well, as one player put it quite bluntly, they take up too much space, waste of time, useless and a big waste of space. This taps into a growing feeling that Genshin Impact is becoming bloated, that these large, complex side modes feel less like fun additions and more like burdensome bloatware, unwanted software that takes up space and resources on your device. And players are feeling that acutely, especially on mobile, where storage space is limited. They're being forced to download potentially gigabytes of data for a mode they find buggy, unrewarding, and maybe can't even play properly due to performance issues or platform restrictions like on PS4. It feels disconnected from the core Genshin experience. It has its own economy, its own progression. It doesn't give Primogems. It feels like a different game entirely, just tacked onto the side. And this feeling connects directly back to that earlier point about wasted resources. The frustration stems partly from development time, potentially being diverted from creating new maps or story content to build Miliastra Wonderland. Added to that is the reality that ongoing game resources, like the player's own phone storage, are being occupied by a feature that many see as fundamentally unwanted and poorly executed. It raises the question of whether this approach of integrating massive, distinct side systems into the main game is sustainable, or if it's just creating resentment. So when you put it all together, the disastrous launch, the predatory monetization, the buggy gameplay, the wasted resources, the feeling of bloat, and then you add nearly a week of complete silence from HoYoverse, is it really surprising that things escalated? The temporary suspension of the official Miliastra Wonderland account, and the community basically laughing about it, saying it was deserved. These aren't isolated incidents. They feel like the predictable fallout. It is what happens when a launch fails this badly, and the company responsible chooses to say absolutely nothing in response. The initial failure was bad enough. The silence poured fuel into the fire, and what we're seeing now, I think, is a significant breakdown in communication, and more importantly, in trust. That silence is arguably doing more damage now than the flawed release itself. It suggests the company is either unwilling or unable to even acknowledge major player concerns when they are this loud and this clear. It makes players feel like their feedback, their time, their investments just doesn't matter. This situation has moved beyond just needing bug fixes or tweaks to the gacha rates. This is now about managing a significant community relations failure. It is about rebuilding trust that has clearly been broken for a large portion of the player base, at least regarding this mode. And that really brings us to the core questions now. Do you think HoYoverse's continued silence is making the situation worse? And at this point, nearly a week in, what could they realistically even say
pay or due to begin repairing the trust that has been lost over Miliastra Wonderland? Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below, but that is all from me, 𝗖𝗍𝗆𝗆𝗏𝗍, and I will see you in the next one. Cheers!